The end of summer and the start of the new school year is just around the corner. For many parents, the question of safety will be on their minds as they send their children off to spend their days in the care of someone else. Here to answer some questions about school safety is Troy Lehman, a specialist in civil litigation and a member of Oatley-Vigmon, which is part of PIA Law. Troy, welcome.
Welcome.
What legal duties do teachers, principals, and school boards have to keep students safe?
Well, the standard that teachers, principals, and school boards have to adhere to is the standard of a careful and prudent parent. As parents, we don't have much choice about sending our kids to school, and there's an expectation that the people who care for them at school will care for them in the same way that we do as careful and prudent parents. So that's become the legal standard in terms of keeping kids safe at school.
Okay, are schools liable for any injury suffered by kids on school property?
No, they're not liable for every injury. That's because accidents can happen. Sometimes no one's at fault. Sometimes kids are injured by other kids, and there's no fault of any school board employee. Liability legally only flows where you can prove that there's been a breach either by a teacher, principal, or the school board of the duty to act as a careful and prudent parent.
Okay, Troy, let's take a quick break, and I have some liability questions. We come back with more of Troy Lehman from PIA Law on 93.5 The Moose. All right, we're back, and we're talking to Troy Lehman from PIA Law in regards to the upcoming school year and safety. And Troy, when is a school liable and when aren't they liable?
I can give you two examples to illustrate the difference between liability and no liability.
Okay.
So with respect to a case where there'd be liability, imagine it's gym time, and you've got a teacher organizing a game of indoor baseball, game that we played back in school, where you're using wooden bats inside the gym. But the teacher knows that these bats can get slippery and the knobs can fall off, and sometimes they'll fly out of a student's hand while they're swinging. But the teacher allows the fielders to stand really close to the batter, and the bat flies out of a batter's hand and hits one of the kids standing very close in the head, and that kid suffers a serious head injury. That's a case where the teacher didn't meet the standard of a careful and prudent parent. They should have known to back the kids up.
Okay.
But if you've got another case and it's recess and the schoolyard's being appropriately supervised, the principal's got the required number of teachers and supervisors out there, and one kid suddenly picks up another and drops the other kid onto the pavement, and they suffer the same injury as the one I discussed before.
Right.
There wouldn't be liability because there's nothing anybody could have done about that.
I see. Okay, well, that makes sense. Listen, Troy Lehman, I have a couple more questions, but let's take a break, and then we'll be back with more from Troy Lehman on MooseFM. We're talking back to school safety with Troy Lehman. He is a member of Oatley-Vigmon, which is part of the PIA law firms. And Troy, can you give us a couple of examples of cases you've seen involving serious injuries at school?
Sure. Our office was involved in a case a little while back when schools were still using the giant TVs that have become dinosaurs now, old tube-style TVs.
Right.
And an elementary-aged student was sent to the AV room to retrieve a TV on a stand. The TV wasn't strapped down in any way, and when the student tried to move the stand, the TV came off and landed on the student, who suffered a severe brain injury as a result. And that's another example of a case where the teacher and the school is not meeting the standard of a careful and prudent parent.
Wow. Let's take another quick break, and then we'll be back with more from Troy Lehman of PIA Law on the Moose. All right, we are back talking school safety with PIA Law civil litigation expert Troy Lehman. And Troy, any other examples of some of the issues that come up with school safety?
I've got another case on the go right now that flows from a high school basketball game where there's an old gym where there's very little room between the baseline and the wall. And there should be thick mats on this wall given how close it is to the playing surface. But there's only thin mats, the thinnest mats on the wall. and there's gaps in those mats. And our client, a high school basketball player, is running on a breakaway, and he's pushed from behind and goes headfirst into either the wall itself or the thin mats, and suffers a severe brain injury.
Wow.
That would have been prevented if there were thicker mats on the wall.
Yeah.
So that's another example of a case where the argument is that the duty is not met, that there should have been more care taken by the school.
Right. So in worst case scenario, when this happens, when a child is injured, what should their parents do?
Well, sometimes it's a minor injury, and all that's required is a little bit of medical attention, some ice and a Band-Aid. But sometimes injuries can be very serious, and if you've got a child who's got an injury that's serious enough that it's going to impact their future, and there's any concern at all that something was not right at the school in terms of supervision or safety, the parent should be speaking with a qualified personal injury lawyer.
Okay. Such as those from the 3 PIA law firms?
Yeah, the firms of the PIA Law, all three of them have been found by Canadian Law magazine to be amongst the top 10 personal injury law firms in Canada. There, of course, are other well-qualified personal injury lawyers, but you should do some research into their background and the experience they have.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And for more information, where can people find it? On your website?
Yeah, there's information on this topic, school safety, and on the PIA Law on the website, which is www.pialaw.ca.
Terrific. Troy Lehman, thank you again for joining us. And again, www.pialaw.ca.